Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Anderson, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this fourth virtual speakers event hosted by Glen Abbey United Church here in Glen Abbey. And before we begin, just a logistical issue, would you just double check to make sure that your speaker is on mute so we don't get any feedback through the presentation? And I'll just say the second logistical part, if you have questions, we're going to look after them at the end of the presentation. So if you could put them in the chat, which you'll find the chat feature, which should show up on your screen. And if you could send them the chat questions to me, and if I look forward to inviting the committee to answer them when they've finished. Well, as I said, this is the fourth in a series, and it's called Extending a Welcome Hand. It forms the second part of our community activities. And so regardless of where we come from or wherever we are, we're all interconnected through the land that we live on and the water that we use and the air that we breathe. And for thousands of years, this land has been the ancestral home and territory for the First Nations and the Métis. We remember the unique history of the Indigenous people who lived on this land, the Anishinaabe, the Androanawan, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. And we thank the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation for walking lightly to preserve this territory and for sharing this land with us. Well, I'd like to acknowledge as well that there are a number that are part of the Glen Abbey Committee Refugee group, but we'll be just hearing a few voices tonight that will be sharing their knowledge and all the hard work that they've been doing. So I want to thank Gary, Chris, and Paul for offering their time to answer some questions tonight. So Gary, let's start it off. What is a refugee?
Well, thank you, Mary. A refugee is a person who has fled or has been displaced from their country because of a fear for their lives. Depending on the receiving country, official UN refugee designation may then be provided. This is quite different from an immigrant, who is a person who chooses to apply to move to another country for personal or economic reasons, or an asylum seeker, who is one who has already arrived in the host country or at that host country's embassy and applies for asylum as they are seeking protection from persecution.
Well, thanks, Gary, for that. And just, can you tell us when and why Glen Abbey United Church started supporting the refugee initiative?
Well, after that international heartbreak of seeing the photo of that poor Syrian refugee, Alan Kurdi, being washed up on a Greek shore back in September in 2015, our congregation started wondering what it was that we could do here in Oakville to help those people.
And then how did Glen Abbey and the community members get involved?
Well, in response to that terrible image and the numerous news articles that we've all read, a few members of our congregation attended some very informative information sessions at Munns United Church and at St. Paul's United Church to learn more about how our community could help. We very quickly learned that it was a complicated and very involved process. And at the outset, we were unsure if Glen Abbey United Church had the adequate resources to be able to sponsor a family solely on our own. So under the guidance of our outreach committee, we agreed to partner with St. Paul's United Church, who had already started the process of offering to sponsor a refugee family. So a small group of us reached out to the refugee committee at St. Paul's United Church, and it evolved into a joint committee between our churches. We met on a regular basis leading up to and after the sponsorship application was accepted by the government.
Well, what is that initial process, Gary, about sponsoring and bringing families to Canada?
Well, the Canadian federal government has robust online tools and guides to help one learn the process. The first step to determine which of the 4 different types of sponsorship programs that you will use. The key difference among the 4 options reflect who is responsible for the funding for the refugees' first year here in Canada. The blended visa program provides direct government financial assistance, and in theory, it represents about 50% of the refugees' first year cost in most places in Canada. And it's appropriate for most of those places. But in practice, for the GTA, because of our higher costs of living, the amount provided actually comes closer to 25%. The other 3 programs establish who is the primary financial backstop. The sponsorship agreement holder program is where the United Church of Canada or other religious organizations has the general auspices for the application, but in reality, it is the local church that is still responsible for funding. For the community sponsorship program, a particular community organization, such as a single church, could undertake that, or for the group of 5, a dedicated group of 5 individuals would come forward to pool their resources. But for all of these other programs, our experience has been that there is usually a primary co-sponsor family connection living in the area that is part of the funding and support proposal.
So here at Glen Abbey, when we first started out, we wondered how much support can we garner from our congregation. So in 2015, we reached out with a survey. I'll just back up there. Down here. Reached out with a survey that's shown here. And we asked not only for financial support, but also for soft support, for driving, for appointments, etc. We received a very generous support from our congregation, and for that, we're very thankful and excited. And it really got us on our way, kickstarted us to start the refugee process. At Glen Abbey, we have the advantage of a unique partnership with Del Manor Glen Abbey Independent Seniors Living, located right next door to our church. Our outreach committee has benefited from our close relationship with Del Manor, and that started because in seeding the development, our church provided the land upon which the development is located. And so a partnership was formed between Tridel Corporation, who built the project, and Glen Abbey United, who put the land into the project. Through this joint venture, really a sharing between Glen Abbey, between Tridel Corporation and Glen Abbey, we've benefited that over the years through grants. Our Glen Abbey Outreach Committee has received a number of grants and funds, some of these specifically designated to support refugee work.
Well, thanks, Chris, for that. There's also, it seems like a lot in preparation. But what was it like experiencing the arrival of your first refugee family?
Well, here they are at the airport. This is a joint refugee group waiting anxiously for our family. And this was the first family that we worked with St. Paul's United Church, bringing under the blended visa program that Gary described. So it's December 2015, and we're at the airport, and our sponsorship applications have been accepted. And we were only provided with a very brief outline of the various applicants, and that's a function of the blended visa program. So in selecting a family, we were only provided with family size, makeup, and nationality. And in our case, we selected a Chin family, which is one of the most persecuted minority groups in Myanmar. A further challenge was that our committee was only provided with a couple of weeks' notice before arrival. And you can see our committee waiting here at the airport. So after what seemed like waiting forever, all of a sudden things started to move very quickly. Here's our GAUC and Van Dot, and they're arriving at the airport. The first smile and hug. You really felt for this family arriving because they had never met any of us. They were meeting people for the first time, only communicating by internet, coming to a very different country, very different language from their homeland. Welcome to Canada. Here you see us meeting and greeting GAUC and Van Dot and their daughter at the airport. We made sure they had all their necessary luggage and their documents. The first thing that happened is meeting with Canada Immigration and Customs staff. It's these people that are the first point of contact with refugees arriving in Canada. They help through border clearance and those kind of things. And finally, we were involved in signing their release with the Canada Immigration and formally turning the family over to their refugee sponsors. And so the story begins.
So this picture that you see here is their first night in Canada. So as Chris mentioned, once the sponsorship application was approved, a month or so went by and we were only given a couple of weeks notice of their actual arrival, which meant that we really had to scramble and reach out to find temporary accommodation. And we're very pleased that several families here at Glen Abbey stepped forward to offer to open their homes to these new arrivals. Many thanks for your heartfelt expression. Ultimately, the decision was made to accommodate them in the home of one of the St. Paul's committee members. So in this picture here, you can see a very tired family, GAUC, Van Dot, and their daughter, the first night of their arrival at the home of one of the St. Paul committee members, where we had a nice dinner available for them and where they were able to stay for a couple of weeks until we secured a rental apartment.
Well, that must have been an exciting time when they finally arrived for both the family and obviously for the committee. But can you tell us a little bit about some of your experiences after the arrival?
So I'll take that one, Mary. And hi, everyone. It's Paul coming to you. Can you hear me? I'm still seeing Mary.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Coming to you live from historic Route 66 in Tucumcari, New Mexico. So I hope you can hear me all very well. So Mary, in answer to your question, we needed to help them kind of with everyday stuff in life. So assimilate to life into Canada. And that meant things like arranging and taking them to English as a second language training, doctor and dental appointments, filing for government assistance, confirming temporary medical coverage, arranging for furniture, clothing, phones, internet, bank accounts, all of the above. And as you can imagine, they didn't have any credit history here. So we backstopped their rental arrangements, their banking, and their credit cards. Many individuals from both congregations were involved in doing this, and we thank everybody for their support. So in the spring of 2016, there we go. Spring of 2016, after a few months in Oakville, the family realized that living in Oakville, the cost of living and employment prospects were going to be a challenge. So this first family, being from Myanmar, found that there was a large, supportive Chin community based in Kitchener. And with the blessing and help of our two churches, we facilitated their move there, where by all accounts, they've settled in very nicely. So throughout that first year, there ended up being many opportunities for the committee members of both St. Paul's and Glen Abbey to engage the family, I'm going to say less formally, on a more social basis. So I'm hoping that we can properly convey our emotions and our feelings when we're telling these things. We wanted to share with you a few of these moments that have left us with some lasting memories. For me, we learned early on that GAUC had earned some money back home playing darts, of all things. And after observing his talents in a local pub a couple of times, we took up his request and a couple of us chaperoned him to regional darts tournaments, first in Kitchener and later on in St. Catharines. And oh my goodness, what an experience. Opening our eyes to a whole new world of darts enthusiasts. And these people were from all across North America. It's amazing how fervent they were. More than once I found myself, I'm going to say, volunteered to keep score, I guess, and to stand between two boards, scrambling to keep score and to keep my senses about me with the darts flying left and right about me. GAUC did really well at these tournaments, and in the circumstances of his family starting a life in a new country, it was so great to see him in his comfort zone, even if it took me way out of mine.
You can also see in the lower right on this slide a church, and that's a local Christian Chin church in Kitchener. And we were invited to attend a service there. So a number of our committee members went with GAUC, including the Reverend Deborah Laforet from St. Paul's United Church, attended a Chin Christian community service. Well, I got to tell you, the service was pretty long and entirely in a foreign language. So we appreciated a little how the families arriving had to deal with foreign languages, but it had much that was familiar to us, including wonderful music and singing. We also learned some new traditions. Afterward, we enjoyed a luncheon with the pastor and other church officials, and thankfully there was a modicum of English spoken at that time, and we figured out what was happening.
And a couple of the things that I'd like to share with you are also shown on this screen that they come to mind. So if you look at the top left-hand corner there, very early on, a few of us from Glen Abbey United Church took the family out to dinner. And on this slide, you can see the picture of the restaurant where we took them, where we thought it would be more aligned, where the food would be more aligned with their culture. And we hope that we'd be able to let them sample some familiar food just in a small way to help them feel a little bit more at home. One of the other things is I helped a bit by assisting GAUC when he was trying to get his driver's license by going out with him a few times to practice driving. And I'm pleased to report that even though there were a few bumps with the curbs, as you can see in this picture, my Lexus survived the challenge. And more importantly, he got his license.
It's great to see how the committee worked together, and there's a lot of great shared experiences. And you've already told us some of the things that a sponsor does, but can you tell us a little bit more about the steps and really the commitments that a sponsor undertakes, Chris?
Sure, Mary. The paperwork challenge, obviously the first step is determining the form of sponsorship that Gary described and raising the funds that fit with the financial challenges of that sponsorship, because the sponsor must carry the family for their first year in Canada and have the funds and resources set aside to deliver that on that promise. Glen Abbey, through our first, some of our second and third sponsors, we were very fortunate to have co-sponsors, a family on 3 applications actually. It all started with our former minister, Hugh MacDonald, and he asked if we could help Mo and Noor bring their relatives to Canada. Now, Mo and Noor lived in Milton, and they were in fact refugees themselves who arrived in Canada about 5 years prior. Mo and Noor were provided significant resources. Just
Hang on a second.
Just a little technical glitch here. We'll be back with you. Slideshow. Current slide. So the next step is determining the government paperwork, and this is where some of the challenges come in, because the date and the names, the military history, etc., all must be consistent and match precisely the requirements of the government paperwork. During the processing of or putting together of these applications, we had a couple of valuable resources that we would recommend. Firstly, the United Church National Office has people that will review applicant details. And secondly, the Catholic Church, they've established something called a Refugee Sponsorship Support Training Office. We interacted with these folks back and forth by email, and they helped us perfect the applications. A normal application can take up to 45 pages. requires up-to-date passports, UN refugee certificates, employment, military, all education, as well as signatories from the refugees and their sponsors. So you can imagine that a bunch of the information has to come from the refugee families themselves who are perhaps in a refugee camp themselves. And so one of the big challenges is getting internet connections to receive and send back in an iterative basis this information.
In addition to the accommodations, which we've alluded to several times, you need furnishings, clothing, kitchen utensils, just to mention a few. If you just sort of think back when you first moved out of your parents' home, and that was a long, long, long time ago for me, but just think of how much stuff you needed to start your apartment. It's the same for these refugees because they arrive basically with the clothes on their back and perhaps a suitcase or two. So both of our congregations pitched in to provide the needed items. Glen Abbey United Church was very fortunate to have the Notting Hill Cooperative Preschool as a long-standing tenant and is rated the top preschool in Halton for a number of years. And the parents of those preschool children have also generously donated key items such as diapers and car seats for the younger children of the families.
There's an awful lot that goes in to make it all work. And coming up to Family Day, I'm just really conscious, what kind of ongoing contact have you maintained with the families, Gary?
That's a good question, Mary. The ongoing interaction that Glen Abbey United Church and St. Paul's has had with the families does vary. For some situations, like our first family, where they did not have any family or friends here, the sponsor may have a much broader obligation in helping them. And the relationships formed during the first year naturally blossomed into some very fulfilling ongoing experiences. And the volunteers from both churches, St. Paul's and Glen Abbey, have stepped up to keep in touch with the family and provide ongoing support. For other refugee families where they may have family here already in Canada, those families play a very important role in providing a lot of the transport and integration support. So now a little slide. We have a little slide from GAUC.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this morning. First of all, I would like to say thank you, God, who gave me this privilege. Secondly, I would like to say thank you all so much to the Glen Abbey Church for giving me the chance to share our family experience. For the beginning, I would like to introduce about myself and family. My name is GAUC, and my wife and our young daughter arrived in Canada, Oakville, in December 2015. Initially settled in Oakville, but soon thereafter used to move to Kitchener, family Chin community. God bless me for daughter, and now we are a 6 family member. Once again, thank you, God, for blessing me a big family. And especially I would like to appreciate and thanks to the person who volunteered for us. Their name is Chris, Paul, and Gary. They taught me a lot how to drive a car, how to do income tax, how to do a resume, employment, baby shower. I really appreciate their kindness and support. I really appreciate them, and I really thank you so much. And also, words cannot express how grateful we are for your help. You were there for us whenever we need it the most. Thank you for everything that you have done for us. Thank you, guys.
So as you can see from this slide, and as you heard from GAUC, the family has grown and prospered. GAUC and Van Dot were so appreciative of the support from both of our churches that they named the daughters that were born here in Canada after several of the St. Paul committee members.
Mary, that's really exciting. What about some of the other families that had relatives or family here already?
Well, with several of our sponsorships, we, as you mentioned, and as I commented earlier, we've been fortunate to have other family members or longtime friends that were here already that could assist with their assimilation, language training, initial housing, and employment. So here we are at the airport, ready to help the arrival of the refugees. And here's a joyful reunion. For some of our applicants, significant financial and other support was provided by a local family and friends. And here you can see the family of Ahmed and Zainab and their 3 daughters arriving at Pearson, being greeted by us, but also being greeted by long lost friends and other family members, including Mo and his wife Noor, who were already settled here in Ontario. Mo participated directly in the application process as a co-sponsor with Glen Abbey United Church. He provided significant ongoing communication links with the family before their arrival, but there are still opportunities to help. So here's one example of us providing other help. Here, Paul was supervising Mr. Handyman, John Fleming, volunteering his time to upgrade the front porch of the rental home of another family that we partnered with St. Paul's. Some of us other handyman, although none of us are as handy as John, from Glen Abbey were called upon from time to help with some lighting and mechanical issues at their home. And shown here is the arrival of another refugee family. This is one that we co-sponsored with Noor to help her bring her sister, Israa, and Isra's 2 boys and her husband, Razzaq, to Canada. Unfortunately, the father, Razzaq, passed away after arriving in Canada, leaving his wife, Israa, and the 2 boys alone here in the new country. In this case, we had been able to provide the family with some reoccurring driving support to the Credit Valley Hospital for cancer treatments prior to Razzaq's passing.
Another experience that left vivid memories was helping organize a special event with the St. Paul's United Church to raise money for the Juleet family. And what you see here is the spring Jubilee. And this started as a fundraising event where maybe it would be a potluck dinner. And then it slowly morphed into what was a gala dinner dance, silent auction, and fun for all. The event raised over $18,000, exceeding the financing goal for this one single event. What really happened during the organization and pulling off this event was a stronger bond was formed between St. Paul's and Glen Abbey United Church.
Hello.
Hello?
Oh, and just a minute, let me turn this down so I can hear.
Okay. Yeah, should mute if you can, please.
Who have I got on the phone?
Please mute.
Yeah, please mute if you would, please.
I am gonna guess maybe Emmett. Oh, go to the top of the class, Grandma. You're pretty smart.
Down, is there any way that you can mute?
I think I just did mute. I think we're okay now again, folks. We'll continue. So the 2 churches came together in this wonderful dinner dance. Kudos to St. Paul's United Church Organizing Committee. Did a fabulous job. Many hands made light work in the promotion of the event, decorating, auction items, food, beverage, DJ, and a live band. And who would be playing in this live band but Deborah Laforet, the minister at St. Paul's, as part of her band. A truly memorable evening. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see the joyous arrival of the first members of the Juleet family.
Well, Chris, that's absolutely amazing, and I can tell that you that these memories are something that will live with many. But can you talk about some of the challenges that the refugees face when coming to Canada?
Well, papers are in order. This slide shows the parents, Ahmed and Zainab, and their 3 girls, together with other refugees in their hotel room in Ankara, awaiting the flights to Canada. What a great looking group. One of the most immediate challenges is around language issues, of course. And thus far, our experience has been that at least one member of the family has some rudimentary English skill. So we recall one arrival of our second family, where one of the girls that we helped sponsor, we were amazed to learn at the airport that the oldest daughter, Saba, had taught herself English over the internet by listening to music videos, especially music by the group One Direction, not sure I know that group, and watching TV. Her grasp of English was very good, and she even acted as a spokesperson for the entire family with immigration officials, helped signing the immigration arrival documents and sponsorship acknowledgements. We were very impressed with her language aptitude. Afterwards, one of our committee members worked with Saba and went with her to a 3-hour academic evaluation. So this was only 2 weeks after she arrived, to determine what grade should she be in and what level of her English skills she had. One of our members was there to support her as the coordinator, gave his decision that was very impressed with this girl as she helped her own fully understanding the decision and her grasp of English language. All of the families have focused immediately upon looking for finding employment. One of the added challenges they face after settling here in Canada is that loans have been made by the government generally to provide airfare and medical treatment, medical checkups. So these loans, although they're low interest, they start needing to be repaid after their first year here in Canada. So once the families, and many of them have been fortunate and worked hard to provide employment and become modestly self-sufficient, we have been able to provide some repayment and help with repayment of some of these government loans. And lastly, to help describe some of the challenges, we have a little video from Saba, who we've already talked about, and she perhaps can best describe some of that family's challenges since moving here to Canada in the Milton area.
Hi everyone, my name is Saba Al-Janabi and my family and I are originally from Iraq. My family consists of my parents and my 2 younger sisters. We were living in Turkey for about 4 years as refugees until in 2018 we were given the chance to move to Canada with the help of my uncle as well as the church. And I think the biggest challenges that we face moving in here can be language barriers, finding a house to live in or like a place, as well as getting used to the system and how everything else works, like especially like with healthcare, schools and all that different stuff. But I think after about 3 years and 7-8 months, we definitely did overcome all of these challenges, and we're still learning day by day, of course. But with my parents in English schools, my 2 sisters are doing really well in school, and I'm doing really well as well. I think we did overcome these challenges, and I am extremely grateful for the church for giving us this opportunity, and I hope they continue their work and bringing in more families and giving them a better life and a better chance. Thank you so much.
Well, that's absolutely amazing, and what a testament to what can happen. You mentioned, though, Chris, that there's a number of different sponsorship programs and options. Could you summarize for us some of the refugee supports initiatives that to date?
Absolutely, Mary. It's probably been a little complicated following all of the twists and turns of the different applications. And this slide summarizes our activities to date. So the first family, as we mentioned, was that BVOR, the blended visa program, the family from Myanmar. The second and third sponsorships were via the United Church SAH sponsorship agreement holder. And again, Mo and Noor were very helpful and necessary co-sponsors on those second and third applications. The fourth application you've heard a little bit about was where we assisted St. Paul's with the family from Lebanon. And that again was back with a United Church process, SAH. And lastly, the fifth application, we're urgently awaiting approval for a family of 5 from Iraq who fled from Jordan. And it's using the community sponsor program. The community sponsor program means that an organization, and in this case, it's Glen Abbey United Church, is the primary financial backstop for the family. And we're anxiously expecting this family to arrive here this year.
Well, thanks, Chris, for the background. Well, Paul, what's next and how can people help?
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, let's talk about what's next then. Since the fall of the government last year, you've no doubt seen anew the heartbreaking images coming out of Afghanistan. So months after the Taliban takeover, supporters of the former government remain at significant risk, including many who supported Canadian troops in various forms. Rights are being trampled, the healthcare system is collapsing, and millions of people are facing starvation. Having been intimately involved in their affairs, our country has made a commitment to help refugees from Afghanistan, but for various and sundry reasons, that process seems agonizingly slow. So among others, Oakville's taking the initiative to do something about that. Maple Grove United Church is leading an initiative now that they hope will result in 4 Afghan families being sponsored by 4 different Oakville groups. These families range from, there's a family with 4 children to just a young couple. But all, the key thing here is that all remain at risk, either escape to Pakistan where the Taliban remain quite active, or they're still hiding in Afghanistan. One of the escaped families, unfortunately, they escaped without a husband and a father who's been missing since the takeover. When these families do arrive, there'll be opportunities to, there'll be opportunities to volunteer time to help out with the many activities we've mentioned here. I'm sorry, I think I've forgotten something here. Through the great work of Maple Grove United Church, the initiative has become a community effort with the Oakville Community Foundation, the Oakville Beaver, and many individuals getting on board. 3 applications have been submitted to the applicable sponsorship agreement holders, which in these cases are the United Church and the Presbyterian Church of Canada's head offices. The 4th will be submitted once the family escapes from Afghanistan. And if you remember, you have to escape from the country to become a refugee in the first place and be eligible to come over. The goal is $40,000 per family, or a total of $160,000. And at $130,000, they're well on their way, and we'd like to help. Glen Abbey United Church has already supported with an initial donation from existing refugee funds. And now, of course, we're hoping to do more. So I want to tell you quickly a story of an amazing Oakville neighborhood group that has already jumped in here. The initial goal for this initiative was to sponsor 3 families, but this group, and they've done it before, stepped up to raise $50,000 and formed their own volunteer group to sponsor a 4th family. So that's where we're at today. So this initiative continues to raise funds to meet the goal, but with the outpouring of community support, it's also open to the possibility of sponsoring more families. So how can you help? Well, clearly fundraising is still the #1 objective. Remembering that we're obligated to support the family in the first year to the tune of about $40,000. That money has to be on deposit before the families arrive. You can make an online donation through the Maple Grove United Church website. You scroll all the way to the bottom from the home page for the click here to donate button, link, I should say. Select 3 Afghan refugees in the dropdown and help make a difference in someone's life. Members of Glen Abbey United Church can make a donation payable to Glen Abbey United Church and indicate it's for the Afghan Refugee Initiative. We're planning to consolidate all these donations and forward it to Maple Grove as one. Either way, a tax receipt will be issued for the full amount. Now, here's where I was a minute ago. When these families do arrive, there's going to be opportunities to volunteer time to help out. So this is a second way you can help. Help out with the many activities we've mentioned this evening with the other families. To get involved, contact Maple Grove United Church or any of the sponsoring or involved churches, and you can be added to a volunteer list. Note now, though, that furnishings and clothing are not being accepted at this time, as we do not know when the families will be arriving. And of course, that could be up to 2 years. So to wrap up this evening, I want to finish where we started off with the poster advertising this event. And that's a reminder that despite the challenges presented by COVID that have disrupted our lives over the past 2 years, we are so fortunate to live in Canada, and particularly in a beautiful community like Oakville. Others, of course, are not so fortunate. And here's an opportunity to make a direct and meaningful difference in their lives. And with that, we want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in this evening. We'll be happy to answer any further questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very, very much, committee members, for this incredibly thorough and inspiring conversation. And you've detailed so much of the hard work that's taken place. I just remind people you can put any questions or comments into the chat so we can have the committee members answer them. We do have a couple right now. One is, what advice would you give to those wanting to support refugees?
I'll take a stab at that, Mary. It's Gary. I think, well, first off, it's very noble for the community to sponsor those at risk. But at first, you need to assess if your organization has the financial resources, like Paul mentioned, and the time and the energy it takes to apply to sponsor. And then more importantly, to help them with the settlement, because you are their lifeline for the first year. You need to stay flexible, and you need to recognize that the family's needs and wants may be quite different from what you had expected or planned for. And it's important to acknowledge and support their priorities and their different culture, within reason, of course.
Thanks, Gary. Here's another one. What have you learned from your time on this committee?
Okay, well, I'll take that one too. Well, personally, I'll answer personally. Personally, to me, it was very rewarding to assist these people. But I did find it frustrating from time to time when you think about all the time and how tedious the application process is, plus how very long the government seems to take in processing and approving these applications. Naturally, we want them to be cautious and we want them to make sure that they vet the applications. But as Paul mentioned, it takes 2 to 2.5 years from the date that you submit the application until the refugees actually arrive. And many support activities will benefit from a shared group participation, where certain key tasks such as application and document preparation are maybe best, done by 1 or 2 key individuals. But there's a lot of other things, as you've heard, that the other parts of your committee or group can get involved with.
Well, thanks, Gary. There's a lot of people that are commenting on the excellent and dedicated work that you people have shared this evening. And I certainly want to echo that. I guess what I've heard here is you've had tremendous patience and persistence. It does take a long time. There's a huge value in collecting together and to share the resources and to bring more involved. And I really, really have to underscore the huge commitment that you've made in really supporting with an ongoing passion the people so that they are able to be successful. There's one question that's just come in. Is there any expectation that these families would attend the sponsoring churches?
Sure. I'll maybe jump in and then maybe Chris or Paul can answer that. Trying to respect the privacy. If the families are Christian, and a couple of the ones that we've been involved with they have attended our church. They've attended St. Paul's Church. But as we mentioned, Biak and Van Dot moved to Kitchener, where there was a group of Chin people there already, and they go to the Chin Christian church there. Our other applicants are Muslim, and they have come periodically to events at our church, but we would not expect them to change their religion. So.
Thanks, Gary. Well, that looks like it in terms of the questions, and thanks for those that contributed your comments and questions for this incredible presentation. Again, thanks to everyone. Did you have any last words, committee members, before we sign off?
Well, probably each one of us has something to say. Like, first off, it is a committee. It's not just one person. Each one of us on the committee have brought different skills. Each one of us have helped out in different ways, whether it be driving to the Credit Valley Hospital, or like Susan going with Saba to the testing for school, Paul going, and Chris going to throw darts and things like that. Those are the fun side of it, but all of our committee has done a tremendous amount of hard work, and it's a great committee to work with. Do you want to add? That's probably it. We can wrap it up.
I think so. Well, again, thanks, and many, many thanks for those that have participated and listened tonight. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Good evening.
Good night, all.
Good
Good
night.
night, all.
Chats were just a great job.